Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is the Local Live.
Hi there, Mamaroneck and Larchmont. Welcome to the Local Live. I'm Siobhan Flattery.
And I'm Kyle Byrne. We're coming to you live on July 17th to get you up to date with what's happening in Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and Rhinebeck communities. We got a great show for you tonight.
With all the rain we've been experiencing, is our community ready to handle flooding? Stay tuned to hear the Village of Mamaroneck's manager, Richard Slingerland, discuss our ability to survive the summer storms.
And here's a sneak peek of tonight's top stories.
Village of Mamaroneck residents complain about Molly Splains again. Stay tuned and find out why.
The Jefferson Avenue Bridge in Mamaroneck is still under construction. We have the explanation in a minute.
Tired of expensive electric bills? Find out a Larchmont resident story on how to save money.
And Gino needs a new home. We'll tell you later how you can adopt this cute pup.
At the July 14th Board of Trustees meeting, Village of Mamaroneck residents registered complaints regarding excessive noise coming from Molly Splains restaurant. Some residents believe that the restaurant is not being disciplined enough about the noise.
Little concerns of what happened Saturday night at Molly's. They had a live band out on the terrace, outside, not inside. According to the bylaws, his permit, there is no music supposed to be outside. When we contacted the police department, they said that they had a permit that he was allowed to have music outside. I find that hard to believe because the zoning board is still has not come to a decision yet to grant him his permit.
Molly Splains owner Mike Hines responded to the residents' comments, stating that he is not breaking any rules.
I, at the beginning of my tenure, Molly Splains received the cabaret permit. It states the following: no live music should be played or dancing permitted on the premises licensed by this chapter between the hours of 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. On mornings of the days following Fridays and Saturdays, or on morning of the days following holiday events, which are to be recognized by the state of New York. On all other days, no live music should be played or dancing be permitted between the hours of 1 a.m. and 8 a.m. The village manager, in his discretion, may permit any premises licensed pursuant to the chapter to be open to the public between such prohibited hours on special occasions. I clearly have a permit to operate last Saturday night. I acted within the laws. I have a cabaret license to have music on my premises.
This ongoing discussion over the noise will be addressed by the Zoning Board of Appeals. We were the first ones to report on this issue, and we will be following this community story as it develops.
Men are still at work at the Jefferson Avenue Bridge. Village of Mamaroneck manager Richard Slingerland states in a press release sent out on July 11, 2014, that certain health and safety regulations have to be met before the bridge is reopened. These regulations include railing heat requirements and clarity of the water circulation through the water main. We spoke with residents living around the construction site, but unfortunately could not get an interview. However, a woman spoke out about the work being done at a most recent Board of Trustees meeting.
And I know that most of you are aware of that issue that I found out about the railing being 33 inches versus 42 inches for safety purposes after my son almost fell over it. That really concerned me a lot, the amount of ineptitude in the preparation of those engineering plans and the fact that they were approved and no one looked at that. It's just kind of unconscionable to me, but considering that it's found now and hopefully it will be fixed, and I hope it's not the taxpayers who pay for that, I'm concerned about keeping it safe.
The Jefferson Avenue Bridge has been under construction since 2012. It is expected that the bridge will reopen in early August, but that date is not yet certain. To watch the rest of the last Village of Mamaroneck board meeting and other meetings, go to lmctv.org and click on Videos on Demand.
Affordable housing is coming to Larchmont Village. The Pine Brook Condominium Project is building 51 condos earmarked for lower-income families and individuals. To qualify for the 1 or 2 bedroom homes, your income must be below a fixed amount. Qualifying applicants will be selected by a lottery. To learn more, there's an informational meeting at the Larchmont Library this coming Tuesday, July 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Or you can visit www.housingactioncouncil.org. We'll have more on this story in the Local Live in the future. Now it's time for Mike Witch's segment in the media. Let's see what news stories are trending this week in our community.
Hats off to the recent high school graduates. The Mamaroneck Review published photos and listed all 372 from Mamaroneck and 103 from Rhinebeck high schools. Both the Review and the Larchmont Ledger featured stories about the speeches and awards conferred at Mamaroneck's commencement. The Mamaroneck Review also reports that the Doghouse truck will be back selling food in Harbor Island Park this summer and fall. The village selected Doghouse over Chef Johnson, who many complained didn't serve inexpensive beach food like hot dogs, pizza, and fries. From the Hamlet Hub, we learned that some residents have been complaining that their water tastes metallic. The Department of Environmental Protection says it's just temporary and the water is safe to drink. DEP is dealing with some algae growth in its upstate reservoir and promises to alter operations within the week to restore the normal taste. If you are experiencing metallic tasting water, please call 311. And finally, there will be 2 block parties this summer in the village of Mamaroneck. The first is happening as I speak, Thursday, July 17th. It's on Mamaroneck Avenue between Halstead Avenue and West Boston Post Road. The second will be August 14th, a Thursday. Both run from 7 to 10 p.m. with live music, games, bounce houses, children's activities, and much more. Well, those are just some of the stories that caught my attention this week in the local online media. I'm Mike Witch.
Hi, Norm Roseboom here, speaking for Local Live, one of the greater programs on LMC TV. I really want you to watch it.
Thank you for joining the Local Live Roundtable. I'm Maura Carlin, and with me handling social media is my co-host, Mike Witch. Tonight's topic, flooding in the village of Mamaroneck and the latest proposals to stem the flow.
Of course, we invite you to ask questions by phone, email, or tweet. I'll be keeping track. You can call into the show at 914-381-0150. You can email thelocallive@lmctv.org, or you can tweet at thelocallive. That information will also be on screen during our conversation.
Thanks. Joining us is Village of Mamaroneck Administrator Richard Slingerland. 2 months ago, after a multi-year study, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers presented its findings and proposals to alleviate water problems. Richard's here to explain the options and where it all stands, and to, of course, answer your questions and concerns. Before we start this interview, though, we have a short video about flooding, and especially the unforgettable 100-year event in 2007.
Here at the French American School on New Street, where 3 years ago Hurricane Irene flooded the entire street, including the school steps. Residents of the community remember Hurricane Irene more than Hurricane Sandy because of the after effects it had on the community. Are we ready for a new storm? Are we ready for flooding? Let's see what the residents have to say about it. What was the after effect on Hurricane Irene?
A couple of trees fell down. There was a lot of flooding, like I said, and but the help was pretty good.
Can you tell me your experience in regards to flooding?
Well, ever since Irene, it floods at the end of my street every single time it rains heavily. And when it happened at Irene, I thought it was a one-time thing, but it happens every single time now.
You're recovering from the first one because
flood insurance is kind of ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
they only cover the basics. They don't. Most of them don't cover contents. Ours didn't cover contents, and so you have to start from scratch.
As you can see, our community is very worried about flooding, especially the ones that live close to the bodies of water. For the Local Live, I'm Amanda Vendigny, signing off.
Richard, it seems particularly appropriate to be discussing this now as this middle week of July, we just experienced 3 inches of rain in a short period of time. What was the flooding situation this time?
With 3 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, we were actually okay. There was some local street ponding, some areas where the catch basins might have backed up, but there was never a real threat to any people in their homes or in the businesses like we see with something like Hurricane Irene. So we've been tracking the flooding problem for many years now, and when we know we're going to get 4 inches of rain, 4.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period or more, that's our threshold.
So it's sort of 4 inches, that's where you get really concerned.
4 to 4.5 inches, we really start to get concerned, exactly.
Okay, so we made it through this one, but let's get to the Army Corps of Engineers proposal. This isn't the first time the federal government has looked at the situation. In fact, a plan was authorized by Congress almost 30 years ago. So why didn't anything happen?
It's mostly about the money. The federal government and the regional governments that were involved in that project back in the 80s, in the present day value of money, as I was explaining earlier, the cost of the project in present day dollars would be about $150 million, $155 million. So it was cost prohibitive back then. It would have taken care of the village-wide problem, but you know, with the concerns from the federal government on down, I think also the village, the county, and other involved agencies back then, for whatever reason, the project didn't move forward. I think it was primarily due to money.
So why couldn't that plan just be, put into effect now?
Well, the cost and the benefit-cost ratio would not be allow it to be funded at the federal level. The federal government requires a benefit-cost ratio of at least 1 for a project to proceed. Because buildings have been torn down, or because buildings have actually been built and elevated above the base flood elevation, we are presently at a 0.53 benefit-cost ratio for that old project. And the present cost of the project is $155 million.
So you're sort of saying time wasn't on our side in not getting it done then.
Correct.
There were things that were done that have fixed certain areas.
Yes.
And so now that plan...
Or torn down buildings in areas that, so that it's not marked as a building or it doesn't have the value of loss to add to the benefit-cost ratio. So we're not avoiding losses because something's torn down. So to approach what they've done, the Army Corps took that old project and they updated it after 5 years of study. They've got a team of engineers in the Army Corps of Engineers, consulting engineers that work with them as well. They've spent 5 years plus working with us to accomplish this. Now, the interesting thing that the Army Corps keeps reinforcing to us is that the project was fully funded. The study was fully funded.
What's the big deal?
That's unusual. Normally, it'll take them several years to fight through, or they'll have the funding trickle in for a study like this. Because Mamaroneck has such a long history of flooding and a flooding problem here that's clearly identified, Congresswoman Lowy, who's the senior Congresswoman and is on the Appropriations Committee, and presently still on the Appropriations Committee. Unfortunately, she was redistricted out, so she doesn't cover Mamaroneck anymore, but she still has a deep concern for the Mamaroneck community. And she's very interested in seeing this project proceed. She's also been working with our current Congressman, Elliot Engel, who's been here, who's toured the village, who's seen the areas that we have to deal with. We've also reached, or had a visit from Senator Schumer and visit and contact from Senator Gillibrand, who've all expressed interest and support to see the project proceed.
And those visits were not in conjunction with Sandy or Irene?
Correct. Correct. So after 5 years of study, they've nailed the alternatives down to 5 or 6 basic alternatives. We're trying to focus on something called the One Medium Project. There's a National Economic Development Preferred Plan, which is the highest benefit-cost ratio for the least amount of money. And that's
the one that the Army Corps of Engineers is sort of advocating.
Correct. But from a local standpoint, we're trying to proceed with a locally preferred plan that's about 10% more expensive. It raises the project cost from about $54 million to about $60 million. And it addresses roughly 85% of the problem.
Right. Whereas the original
NED plan,
right?
The National Economic Development Plan,
addresses about 60%.
About 63%.
Okay.
So this achieves the best benefit throughout the village for the most cost-effective investment.
Okay. So, but there's a concern because it's actually about an extra $6 million.
Correct.
Who will be paying for that? Is there a greater obligation on the local municipality when the Army Corps is recommending something smaller?
Yes, and there's also an important thing to note. It's very important that we try to accomplish this soon, because the federal funding levels recently changed. I believe it was, I was told by the Army Corps of Engineers, it was either 2006 or 2007 when they last had their Water Resource Development Act bill. The funding stream went from 65% to 50-50. Because we're in the project was started under the old auspices, it's still 65-35, but that's of the National Economic Development Plan. So by the time we're done, let's say if we have a $60 million project, they estimate the federal government's contribution is going to be about $30 million, so roughly half the cost of the project. After that, we get to the state. The state would have to put out roughly $12 to $13 million, and so that at let's say $43 million, that leaves roughly $9 to $9.5 million for each the County of Westchester and the Village of Mamaroneck. Each. So that gets to our roughly $60 million cost estimate. So, and that's the thing we have to be concerned with. We need support and approval from the federal government. We need support and approval from the state government. We need support and approval from county government, and they have the restriction that if there's any cost expenditure over $10 million, it requires a county-wide referendum. So we want this plan to, it's a great opportunity for the community to work with all these government entities and have something happen, have something implemented.
What's the likelihood that all those ducks will be in order?
I couldn't say. We certainly have a lot of support from the federal government. We've had a lot of involvement and participation from the State Department of Environmental Conservation, the County Department of Planning, with attendance from the County Executive's Office. We're hoping that they're all going to be in support of it. But the question is, when push comes to, perhaps, I don't know if shove is a better word as much as rowing, we would like to see them all agree to come up with the money. I think there's also economic development benefit to be realized, because it takes projects that might not be possible in flooding situations. They talk about having, they gave us maps that show buildings that would still be what they call wet or at greater risk. Once the project's done, there's a vaster area of property that's higher and drier. Not completely high and dry, but much less at risk of being flooded and damaged. So it creates a broader area that has greater opportunity for repair, expansion, development, redevelopment of collapsing buildings, of buildings that were torn down and replaced with parking lots, of old abandoned buildings and structures right now, some of which are still abandoned and empty because of Hurricane Irene, because of other local storms and flooding. So,
with either plan, how would the village finance its part?
Most likely, the village would finance our part through debt, through
bonds.
Yes. And our current debt load is, in the tens of millions of dollars. I think it's probably, I'm just giving a rough estimate. Okay. It's about $50 million between, and that adds the library's bond to our debt. It adds the firehouse bond to our debt. It adds other local infrastructure improvements and purchases of equipment like the firehouse. That's all added to our debt. But we do have debt capacity. As the firehouse is paid off, it frees up money that we could have money available for the flood project.
How does it affect your rating?
Our rating is right now very good. We have good capacity and set-asides for significant capital projects. If we have water projects that are out there to be improving the water system, we have to replace or upgrade the water treatment plant in compliance with a federal EPA order that we're trying to work with the County of Westchester and the State of New York Department of Health. That could be a major project, $60 to $80 million, but and the village's portion might be 5 to 10. It all depends. How big a group can we cooperate with? So it's all part of the bigger plan, but the question boils down to what is possible. The answer is anything's possible with money. How easily can we come up with the money?
Do you think the village and village residents have the appetite to undertake this?
I'd like to hope so. But that remains to be seen.
Well, we have a couple tweets already about insurance, and I'm wondering if people in these flood-prone areas would find it easier to get flood insurance if this project goes through?
Well, depending on how their property would fall, if this one medium $60 million project took place, they would be, depending on where their building was, if they were what's known as improved and the base flood elevation was changed, they would no longer have to buy flood insurance. Or if they wanted to, just as a precaution, they would not be subject to the higher rates within a flood zone. So it would be vastly reduced in annual expense.
At the meeting, hearing, I don't know what presentation by
Sure.
the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, some members of the public spoke, and what the bulk of them seemed to be concerned about what I'd categorize as the devil in the details, that there weren't enough details telling how deep you're going to dig, how wide,
Yes.
where's it going to be, what pipes are going to, you know, the other effects.
Sure. The Army
So how
Corps,
are you going to get this to have a groundswell of support if people don't know what they're really supporting?
well, the Army Corps right now just made this public presentation. They have not released all the details of their study to us or to the general public. At some point, hopefully in the near future, nearer sooner than later, we expect and hope that they'll release all that information so the public can digest it as much as we can. You know, once people start chewing on things and reviewing the information, taking a look at what's out there, there'll be more opportunity for feedback.
Okay. Some of the water problems, as I understood them from years ago, is that the water comes from upstate and it comes down. Is anything being done, would anything be done to prevent some of the flow from upstate? Because this is all dealing with once it's here.
Sure. Well, the village is part of Westchester County, and we're in roughly a 31-mile drainage basin that drains down to Mamaroneck. That goes all the way up to Rye Lake at the Westchester County Airport. That's a huge drainage area. At 3.1 square miles ourselves, we're only 10% of the area. So 90% of the remaining area drains through the village of Mamaroneck to get out to Long Island Sound.
Right.
So we're at the bottleneck. We're
Right.
the most impacted by all the other areas upstream. They've done things that are, you know, White Plains and Harrison have developed vast portions of area with impervious surfaces, parking lots. Other areas upstream into North White Plains and Armonk, they've all developed large areas of office parks, shopping areas.
So what I'm asking is, shouldn't part of the solution be up there to prevent more
For
water
whatever
flow?
reason, the Army Corps has said that from a cost-effective standpoint, the greatest opportunity for the most cost-effective benefit is to focus on the village of Mamaroneck. And
Now, you mentioned the sound.
Sure.
And the environmental studies that they talked about at the presentation had to do with, you know, looking at the wildlife and, you know, in the rivers. But there was no discussion of the effect on the sound of this water going in. Has that been considered, and would it change based on the proposals?
well, the water already goes there. The water comes through the village of Mamaroneck and is conveyed through all these different communities, whether it's by the Mamaroneck River, which goes up into North White Plains and areas north closer to Rye Lake, and other areas like the Beaver Swamp Brook that goes up into Harrison. All of those come down through Mamaroneck. The water quality issue is really a separate one, but that's something we're also being asked to address. We've got leaking sewers that need to be fixed. We've found some sources of contamination and leaking sewers that are already repaired. We've got storm drains that also have leaks and inflow from people's homes, driveways, roof gutters that go into the sanitary sewers. It causes the sanitary sewers to overflow, and that goes directly into the storm drains. So it's a vicious cycle that all ends up down in the harbor and in Long Island Sound.
Is that just us, or are there other communities up county in this drainage basin?
Probably every community in Westchester has this problem. You know,
But we get the...
we have one of the heaviest or most severe degree of problem, but there's other communities that are just, you know, a couple of percentage points right behind where we are. You know, it's the age of the infrastructure. We have 100-year-old sewage pipes, 100-year-old drain pipes with cracks and leaks. Just looking at a recently collapsed sewer pipe, we had a video company go through with a camera going through the sewer, the sanitary sewer, and the comment from the guys was this was clearly never built to be watertight. And that means inflow through the groundwater goes into the sanitary sewer, it builds up in the pipe, and then everything starts to get exceeded as what they, what the capacity is. So we're changing the way we're approaching all this.
Okay, getting back to the proposals that are on the table.
Sure.
Can you handicap which one and what the chances are of getting it through?
Well, our preference, again, is what we've recommended officially, and we have letters from the county and the state also requesting what's called the one medium plan, and that's the locally preferred plan. The total estimated cost with all other involved expenses, buying easements, asking for access through property, is roughly $60 million. So that's, the Army Corps gave a specific cost estimate of $59,260,000. But as you go through negotiations for purchasing easements, as you go through publicly bid projects, there will have to be environmental reviews and other analyses. That cost will likely change. It's an estimate.
Right.
Yeah.
Is this the proposal that's going?
This is the proposal that all levels of government involved have been requesting.
So is that the one everyone should really be focused on at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. What are the next steps?
The next steps are for people to contact their county legislator, contact the county executive's office, contact their state legislator, and contact the governor's office, and then contact their federal representatives. Most importantly, our legislators, the congressperson, Mr. Engel, and contact our two senators, Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand. Let them all know we're in support of this. We want to see it happen. We hope, we've been working with the Army Corps. They've said that there's a Water Resource Development Act bill that's pending at the end of this year, early for 2015. And it's a perfect timing to have this plan done, have them release their study, and then we could try to see if we can get the money.
Now, anyone who wants to watch the presentation by the Army Corps of Engineers can watch it going through LMC TV's website.
Videos on demand.
Videos on demand.
Yes.
But what if they want the actual presentation?
The presentation is also posted on our website, and we do have links to the Army Corps of Engineers website where this and other presentations about Mamaroneck's flooding problem are all posted.
Great. I guess I should also just mention that in the presentation and the written presentation,
yes.
There's contact information for the Army Corps of Engineers if people have direct questions
Exactly
for them
right.
as well.
And there is a public information branch that has those contacts with the proper people to answer the questions.
Well, we sure hope that you'll consider coming back on the show.
Sure.
Because as a link to the community, it would be valuable to have that information presented out on the local live.
Sure.
And we have a couple more tweets, but I think we're out of time right now, but they're about flooding. If flooding does occur, the plan for alerting residents and the plan for getting people out. The village has ways to do this.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll keep it short. We take a long look, we plan ahead, we look a week out, 30 days out, and as everybody knows, the weather changes. When we see something's happening, we'll make calls as a real emergency. But in the absence of that, when we're closer to a narrow threshold, we'll send out emails and people can subscribe to that. That's on the Village of Mamaroneck's website. We also post on our website emergency notifications, and that's all on our main page. There'll be a red bar up at the top that gives emergency notifications. We also found and would do things as simple as during Sandy, when all the power was out and many people didn't even have a home phone, we were walking around paper notices. But we also would do reverse 911, as many people found during that. We would often do daily reverse 911s to get the message out to as many people as possible. So phone, internet, paper if need be, we get the message out any way we can. And I think there was another question about advising in time of flood, how far in advance people know to evacuate. Right. We usually, if we are very certain that an emergency and a flood are going to occur, we recommend people advance evacuate, because we don't have the resources to save people and go in through flooded areas to help them when we may be responding to emergencies. We saw a huge reduction in the number of calls to evacuate people between our current emergencies like Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy, because from the 2007 flood, because we advance notified people, it was probably a vastly reduced percentage of what we had to deal with in 2007, because the people were prepared, they were safe in advance.
Well, unfortunately, we're already out of time. We thank you very much for joining us, Richard Slingerland, the Village of Mamaroneck Administrator.
And remember, folks, that if you have ideas for a future roundtable discussion, you can write to us at thelocallive@lmctv.org. You can tweet us at thelocallive, and we love hearing from you.
Thanks for joining the roundtable.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more community stories.
Hello, Mamaroneck. I'm Carly Rose, and you are watching The Local Live.
This week on our community segment, we have a contribution from Larchmont resident Cindy Habig. Cindy, a local homeowner, looks for ways to reduce her Con Edison bills. Check it out.
Month after month after month, my utility bills go in only one direction, and that's up. So one day, when the phone rang and the person said, "Could I please speak to the person in charge of the electric bill?" I said, "That's me. Let's talk."
I learned that New York State would pay for a company to come to my house to perform an energy audit, which would lead to recommendations for improvements that would bring my energy bills down.
Most homeowners qualify for a free energy audit where the state pays us $250 to come in and provide this service, which provides a lot of safety testing. It provides all of the energy analysis that we do. The ultimate goal of that process with the energy audit is to then see if a homeowner qualifies for available rebates and incentives. There are some rebates available, there are low interest loans available from New York State that can actually help you pay for improvements, because ultimately it's good for everybody if individually we use less energy.
So when we go through here and we test through here, we're going to test for carbon monoxide.
So you put a hole so that you can put a probe in to measure?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll stick it down into the throat, and then we'll put a probe in here as well and test the draft pressure. And we're going to do the exact same thing on your water heater.
After checking the efficiency of my heating and cooling equipment, much of the energy audit involved searching for airflow through tiny nooks and crannies in my old home that caused me to waste precious heating and cooling dollars.
If you look out here, you can see some daylight. You know, there's other spots that I noticed you can see a little daylight. You don't want to see any daylight in any area.
So what we're looking at is a bunch of very dirty insulation at the rim joist. And as we know, there's a lot of air moving through the rim joist in this house. So when you have fiberglass insulation sitting in front of moving air, what we have is a big cigarette filter. And it gets filthy, and it's not really doing its job, because nothing about that fiberglass is really capable of keeping air out. So we need something on that surface that creates an air barrier.
Once we're done testing this equipment, we'll take full basement pictures to give us an idea of what we can do insulation-wise around the basement as we work our way up.
So what they're trying to understand upstairs is, what are the surfaces of the building shell, right, the thermal envelope, and how well insulated are those surfaces? Because as heat rises, those surfaces at the top of the house are some of the most important for holding that energy inside the house. We need all of those surfaces to be much, much better at holding heat in. Thicker, you can think of it as putting on a thicker coat or a thicker, warmer hat. Essentially what this house is wearing in the winter is a baseball cap, and we need it to be one of those big Russian hats with the ear flaps.
So we're going to foam seal around the box, and then we're going to look to blow probably 16 inches of insulation in this room once everything is air sealed. And it's going to basically look like a winter wonderland in here once we're done.
The grand finale of the audit was the blower door test.
Basically what we're looking for in an energy audit is how the house is using and losing energy. One of the keys to that, one of the most memorable tools, is the blower door, where we suck air out of the house, and it tells us where the air is coming in. When we walk around the downstairs and you walk in all the places where air is coming toward the front door, it's really coming up from the basement. Like, that's where you feel a breeze.
Air was also being sucked in at the top of the house.
That's what's coming. Wind blows in the summertime, that's what's coming in here.
Oh, yeah.
It's rushing in. pulled in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got the hi-hat.
Put your hand up
feel
there.
the heat that's coming through there.
Oh yeah, wow. Looks like a space heater.
2 weeks later, Russell returned with the official test results and some recommendations.
It was no shock that the house was very leaky.
This jumps out at me. Given that your leakage is 447% greater than the limit, it is recommended that air sealing. That's pretty leaky.
Yeah, so that's more than, almost 5.5 times leakier than we'd like. And so you can see an itemized list of what we're improving in terms of the boiler, the hot water heater, the air sealing overall, the individual knee walls and knee wall floor areas, and the rim joist down in the basement. If we do all the things that we're proposing to do, this is the cost, but this is what we should be saving. Approximately $1,500 a year is $125 a month.
I think some of the work makes a lot of sense to do. It's a matter of whether I pay money month after month after year after year after year to Con Ed, or I invest a little bit in my home and spend less with Con Ed on a yearly basis. I would far rather do that.
Hi, I'm Judge Christy Derrico. Watch The Local Live Thursdays at 7:30 on LMC TV. That's in order.
In the New Rochelle Humane Society, a wonderful dog, Gino, waits for his future family. He's a 3-year-old sweetheart and has a great personality, making him very family-friendly and a perfect addition to any household. Gino is house-trained and loves to swim, earning the nickname the King of the Kiddie Pool. Contact Dana Rocco to find out additional information about adopting this truly special dog.
And we recently got word that one of our featured pets was adopted last week, so congratulations to the new owner. And before we sign off, we want to remind everyone that the Local Live has a new rebroadcast schedule. We'll still be live each Thursday night at 7:30, but you can now catch the week's episode again every evening at the same time. For all of us at the Local Live, I'm Kyle Byrne.
And I'm Siobhan Flattery. Tune in next week on the Local Live for the latest news in Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and Rhinebeck.
Thanks for joining us and have a great evening.
Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is the Local Live.